Hey everybody, welcome back to another feedback video. Today we'll be looking at a couple of shots. The first one's from Theodora. It's 15 seconds, which is amazing. So let's take a look. Um, yeah, so first of all, I want to say, I really applaud your ambition. I went back and watched the video, the first feedback video um, of the stills you showed, and I heard your direction and your intent with the shot, and I think it's really cool. Um, I think it's really cool effect. I think you're using the effect for the story, so I think that's justified. Um, and I think it's working pretty well here. There was a couple things that I noticed that I think might improve the read of the shot. So, when I first looked at this, I looked at it without looking at that first video of your critique. And there was a couple things that kind of caught my eye that made me a little bit confused. And I think, with any shot, confusion is like your greatest enemy, right? Like the last thing you want the audience to say when they're watching a movie is like, what is that? Um, so I think a couple things here. I know that you said that you're sorting out kind of the camera movement. So there is some jitters up here. I'm not going to comment on that. I think you've got it sorted, as well as a ship animation. But in terms of the read of the shot, you know, I pulled up some clips here. Um, so stuff like this, where there's, a windshield or um, a helmet in front of the characters, it's very difficult, I think, to be able to read and connect with the character as well as have this realistic um, things going on. So this is one way to do it, I think, with Ridley Scott and the DP. They just kind of frame the camera and block the characters so that you can read their expression, and all the high contrast sort of bright stuff is happening up, out of their face area, and that really clears up, any confusion, especially with short shots. You want to be able to read everything very quickly. So that's one way to go, is kind of stage things where, the darker parts are kind of covering the face so you can see very clearly, and then the high contrast stuff is outside of the face region. Um, the other way to do it is Top Gun Maverick style. So the visors here are all CG, right? So that enables them to kind of put whatever they want in the reflections, and clearly they've done it very carefully to not block the character's eyes. Um, I think a real visor, a real glass would have that reflection. You can see even in his eyes how bright it is out there. Um, so they've chosen to sort of just get rid of the reflection completely around the character, which I think is a legitimate choice as well. Um, so what you've got, I think, is working very well for the most part. I think the one thing that did confuse me was this shape here of this. I think it's a satellite dish. Um, because you have so many layers of windows in your shot, we're looking into a window, and there's windows in the back, and there's windows upon windows in the back, which is great for selling the dolly zoom, or trombone zoom, or the smash zoom, whatever you want to call it. Um, but this shape, in my first viewing, read as a window, another window to me. So I was kind of like, well, what am I looking through, or what am I looking at? Um, and it did kind of cause a little bit of confusion, especially with, how bright it is back here. I wasn't sure what I was looking at. So I would think, you could probably get rid of this, or shift them both over, or put it up here or something like that, to kind of get it out of her face, because it's really sort of right in the middle of where my eye is at the moment. Um, a couple of smaller things with this. This is really cool what you have back here. I think it really adds a lot of depth. I think this temperature shift from the purple to the sort of almost daylight feeling feels a little bit abrupt to me, and it sort of catches my eye over here where there's this pop of green and warmth where it's very violet and cool over here. So maybe think about either taking this down a little bit or sort of unifying it slightly so we're not distracted so much. And the other thing, this is a minor thing, but this little guy, test tubes popping in over here, and the way they distort with the dolly zoom, I think distracted me quite a bit as well when you really don't want anyone to look away from her and from the ship coming in. So I might just sort of either dim down the spec on that glass, or get rid of it or put it somewhere else, because I did find it a little bit distracting. The character herself, I think, is super successful. I think you took the notes really well from the previous critique, and she looks moody. She looks pissed off, which is, I think, what you wanted. So that's great. So the other thing that confused me here watching it for the first time was this lights dimming down. To me, I think it's not quite working. Well, it certainly works to bring attention to the ship, but I think it's not quite working because, in my mind, having no context, right? Your audience is going to have context of the backstory of what you think this shot is going to be. There's no motivation for the light to turn off here, right? So the way it fades off, it just feels like, maybe a double exposure that's fading off or something. And it's just a little bit confusing, I think. But I think the benefit not the benefit, but I think, a good thing about you're sort of like done with the dolly zoom, so that the majority of like the whoa, like crazy stuff going on is over. So I think you can actually leave her reflection on, maybe dim it, or not her reflection, sorry, her lighting on, and the inside lighting on, and just as the shot goes, maybe dim it down slightly, and then leave it on. And what you can do, I think, is have brighter lights on the ship, right? So make this cockpit light even brighter, maybe have searchlights coming down, and that'll really snap your eye from here to whatever the highest contrast thing, which is hopefully the ship coming down and the movement of the ship over here. And then you can have this nice sort of juxtaposition of her and what she's left with on this planet together in the frame, instead of having her disappear completely. The other option is, I think, what was your first idea, which is, the camera comes out and then cranes up, which kind of reminded me of course, all of our favorite dolly zoom shots. This Ratatouille shot, where the camera keeps going. She's done, or Brad Bird and the DP are done sort of with this dolly zoom movement, but the camera keeps going out. And that, I think, could work to kind of show the expanse of this base in your original idea if you wanted to go back to that and zoom out. But I certainly think it's up to you. I think this could work as well. Just sort of figuring out how to balance, her along with this ship. Looking at my notes to see if there's anything else. Yeah, I think that's it. I think you've done a really good job here. There's so much to balance in this shot. This is super tricky, and I think the read of it is pretty good, and the effect is really cool. So yeah, keep going on the camera work and keep going on the animation work, and I think doing some of those changes and really trying to boost up the clarity, I think would help a lot. But yeah, great job. So let's look at Mohammed's shot here. First of all, I like what you've done here. I like this idea. The reference is an AI image. You can kind of tell that she has three hands here. Um, I would sort of caution against. I think, you know, people have different thoughts in AI. I don't want to get into that, but in terms of using it as reference, lighting reference specifically, it's not going to be the most accurate thing. So I would maybe use it as inspiration, but maybe not so much as like what lights would actually do. Um, it's better to use like a photo or a film still for that kind of stuff, because what this is kind of showing here is that this little tiny lamp here is, that's coming out of just straight out of the table, I guess, is brighter than all of these crazy buildings behind her. Um, and it's not super realistic, I think. So, just to say that right off the bat. But in terms of your shot, I think, there's a couple things, directions you can go from here, I think. Um, if you do want them to be lit by the city, I think, you know, clearly the character lighting is kind of like, coming from the outside, like your reference is. But right now it feels so bright and unmotivated by everything over here. Um, it's even brighter, she's like blowing out almost. So I think what could really help is the concept of wrapping the key light, right? So um, that's something that people, DPs, do a lot, is, you have your strongest light off to the side, giving them a rim in the back along the edge of their silhouette, and then you slowly, make your lights bigger, softer, and dimmer as you come around, so the light really like wraps around the face. So I can kind of show you what I was thinking here. So this is a paint over, a very rough paint over of the face, and you can kind of see, right here you have, if you squint down, it's almost just a two-tone face, right? It's like the highlights and the shadows and nothing in between, and it's looking like your key light is very hard. It's either a very small source or it's a directional light that the angle is very small. And for a scene like this where it feels romantic and it feels sort of, like they should be having a good time, I think it would benefit you to soften out those lights, right? So make that light bigger, kind of use the wrapping principle to sort of soften out the transition between light and shadow. Hopefully you get the idea from this. If you squint down, and I did a mosaic of this, you can kind of see, it feels a lot more natural, like this. So yeah, and then I kind of painted out his chin. I think he's getting a little bit too much bounce. It almost looks like it's from the coffee. So it's a little odd here. I think, you had a great idea of moving the camera and moving her so that she's the focus of the shot, and I think it really works. And maybe, you can afford to sort of lose some of the light on him and just get that nice rim that you have, and just play him, a little bit down so we're looking over here. The other idea is that you could lose the background a little bit more and have the light motivated from the candle or this little cat. I think people cheat all the time. They'll motivate lights from, like, brighter lights from smaller light sources than would actually give off that amount of energy. But there's this shot from Baby Driver, which is a similar idea. There's no way, I think, there's no way they're being lit by only this light. There's probably lights down here that are helping out this light, but the motivation is this lamp, right? And you can see how nice and soft it is. This is kind of the wrapping that I was talking about, where, the intensity is more over here and it sort of falls off nicely. You can see on the arm, the gradient is super nice and soft, and it makes them look soft, which I think hopefully is the point of this image. Um, so you could play it that way as well. It's kind of up to you on what your intention is. If you do go with the idea of lighting them from the environment, from the outside, I might look at a different background picture because it's just really busy. This one with the bridge and like this vertical um, thing on the bridge and another bridge up here, and there's all these lights over here. This AI image is very clean, the silhouettes in the background, so you're not spending a ton of time with your eye getting lost in like, oh, what is all of that? You kind of want to just focus on them, right? So I might pick a more graphic background and then maybe play with depth of field to blur it out more, so we're really paying attention to what's going on between these two. And one more thing I wanted to point out was, back to this AI image, something that this is doing very successfully, I think, is playing with the idea of dark over light and light over dark, right? So you want to be able to read the character. So here you're playing, this dark silhouette, and it's easy. You could easily have this chair be dark and you would lose your entire back over here. But they're doing a good job, playing this dark silhouette over this light to really show her silhouette very clearly here. And here you're playing kind of light over dark over light, and then over here again, it's very clear what's going on in the image, which I think here, if we look at this mosaic again, you can tell what's going on. You have this sort of vertical bar here that's helping her read, but it is a little bit less focused, and I think you might be able to push it a little more to get a better read on this. Just to illustrate the wrapping thing a little bit more, this is kind of what I mean when I'm talking about adding multiple lights to sort of fake a very soft light. You can have one light that's sort of behind her and behind her head, giving this nice sort of hot rim, and then have another light that's closer to the front of her face, or 3/4, that's extending this light, right? So, but it's softer. So this is bigger, it's a softer light, it's a dimmer light, and you're sort of helping the transition between light and dark. And then maybe one more over here. So you get this nice soft wrapping light that I think would be pretty appropriate for this scene. So you might want to try that out and see how that works for you. I know people do it a lot on productions and movies and stuff like that, so it might be worth checking out. But yeah, great job. I think this is a great start and a great layout, and I think I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with it. Thank you.